as we were worshiping over here, I just kind of felt the Holy Spirit prompt me to start to talk a little bit different. And so um, I want to talk to kind of the students that are here. You guys can listen in, okay? And part of it is because it was the middle of my freshman year in college, and all of a sudden I started getting just burdened with this question of what are you going to trade your life for? Which is kind of a big question. And I kind of had this thought going like, you know what, no matter what, I mean, if you live, one day or you live to be 85 and then you die, I mean, either way, you're kind of a martyr for something. You're going to trade your life for something. So what are you going to trade your life for? And the more I began to wrestle with that question as a freshman in college, the more the thought that came to me, the best I could do to trade my life for is something that's to help as many people as possible. The way I word it is find their way back to God, find and follow Jesus. And the more I began to pursue that question, the more I really the best vehicle we have for helping people find and follow Jesus is brand new churches. I need to start a new church. And so basically, me and 4 friends from college, one was my brother and then 3 other friends, we all decided to go start a church. So I'm like 25, John's 23, Darren's 21. We're all in our early 20s, and we decided to plant a church. So we go plant this church in Chicago, and by God's grace, it kind of works. And we began to apply some things that we saw in Scripture that we saw Jesus doing around multiplying. We wanted to really be a multiplying church. And so in time, we started multiplying disciples and multiplying leaders, these small groups essentially are missional communities. And then we started multiplying in time, even locations across the city of Chicago and the suburbs. And then quite a few years in, then we started planting churches. We planted a church in Denver. We had like 35 people who sold their homes and left their jobs and moved to Denver to go plant that church. People will do crazy things if you ask them to. And then next year, we sent about 15 people who moved to Southern California. The year after that, we had about another dozen people that moved to Detroit area, and then the year after that was Boston, then New York, and we started planting churches. Then all of a sudden we got some connections in time internationally, and we're still doing kind of that same basic stuff, of multiplying disciples, right? Establishing spiritual communities, mobilizing leaders, and then launching new churches, especially. We just keep doing that over and over and over again. And again, this is just by God's kindness and by God's grace. And I partly want to say it to you guys because if you start thinking about this now, you guys start thinking about this now, it's amazing what God can do through you. And again, I hope everybody takes this in the right way. So we look over our shoulder. We started something, not only planted Community Christian Church, we started something called New Thing where we started planting churches. And we eventually had a footprint of 69 countries around the world. And at the end of last year, we helped plant over 30,000 churches. And that's, you guys have heard me talk, you've been around me, and you're going like, yeah, he's pretty good, right? It's not like I'm no Andy Stanley or whatever, right? It's not that, it's okay. And I'm telling you, you guys can do this stuff. And so what I want to do in this last session, I want to speak to you all, but I also want to speak to the rest of you all too, okay? And I want to challenge you with this idea of how we can make an impact and what it means to be a multiplier. And I think there's some really simple things that Jesus taught us and simple things that we've kind of learned over the years. And what I want to do is I want to teach you, and I'm going to give you a really simple diagram, and I hope you'll jot this down. This is like only the second time I've really taught it like this, and so I'm kind of still experimenting. But I hope you'll take this and then you'll begin to teach the people around you to do the same thing. And that's how you create this movement. Does that make sense? You with me on this? Because here's what I am certain of this, okay? I'm convinced that this is true about you in this room, whether it's students or whether it's pastors or staff or lay leaders. What's true about you is that you didn't get into ministry just to kind of fill a pulpit or run a program or, manage volunteers. You got into this thing because you wanted to make a difference, right? That there was something more. You have a desire, really, maybe in a word, to make an impact. Isn't that right? I think that's probably true almost maybe not 100%, but I bet almost everybody goes like, yeah, I would like for my life to make an impact. And if that's you, in the little bit of time we have got, I specifically want to talk to that person. Because the truth is, your life is going to make an impact. It's kind of like that question, what are you going to trade your life for? It's going to make an impact. That's not optional. The question is not if your life will make an impact, it's kind of what kind of an impact will it make. And it might be minimal, or it might be something that's really powerful and big. It could be shallow, or it could be lasting. It could be temporal, or it could be eternal. And maybe this would be a good time. Let me reassure you, you do not have to be a great leader to make an impact. Let me tell you a funny story. My very first ministry role, I was a youth pastor. I was a senior in college, and I got a gig being a youth pastor. And I recruited my friend Larry. I was a senior. I recruited my friend Larry, who was a junior, to be my intern. Mostly, I thought it'd be fun. And I did want him. I wanted him to get as much as he could out of this internship. But I took Larry, my 1 year younger intern, and I would always tell him, you know what, Larry, I'm investing in the next generation. I took Larry with me on a hospital visit. And we were going to visit a young adult who had undergone gastric bypass surgery, GPS. Are you familiar with this? So basically, it's the kind of surgery where they remove a part of your stomach so you can lose weight. And so on our way to the hospital, I'm giving Larry kind of the pastoral playbook for how you make a hospital call. And I'm saying, here, just remember these things. Be encouraging. We're going to pray, and we're not going to stay too long. That's what you just remember that about a hospital visit. Be encouraging. We're going to pray, and don't stay too long. Simple, right? So we walk into the hospital. I'm confident, and I introduce us to this young adult who just had this GBS surgery, make some small talk, and then my mouth said, well, my brain should have stopped. I said to this young adult who just had this GBS surgery, I said, I'm trying to be encouraging. Making this decision to go forward with this kind of surgery, that took a lot of guts. True story. Larry, the intern, my friend, is looking at the floor, trying not to lose it. The patient, this young adult, is staring at me like, really? That's all you got? And I'm trying to figure out, how do I disappear? All right, why do I tell you that story? I tell you that story because I'm telling you, in all your efforts to try to make an impact, it's going to be messy. Mistakes, embarrassing mistakes that someday you'll use as illustrations to get a laugh will happen. And God does not call you to perfection. The most important thing I think He does call us to, though, is, I would say, two things. One is to be available. Just be available. And then two, try your best to follow Jesus' example. Be available and follow Jesus' example. So here's what I'm going to do. I got about 25 more minutes. In the next 25 minutes, I want to show you in a very simple diagram, how to spend the next 25 years of your life so you can make an impact, okay? And I said 25 years because I figure this group down here, they got about 50. Some of you all out there, you got 5 or 10, so we're going to split the difference. We're going to just call it 25 years, okay? Here's how you're going to split. And I would call this, okay, here's how to be a multiplier. How to be a multiplier. Now, what I want to do is I want to start with the inside. Because if you're going to be a multiplier, and we're talking about now the next 25 to 50 years, a long time, because I want to start on the inside, because if you're not healthy on the inside, you will not multiply health on the outside. So think of your life, I'm driving a car, okay? Think of your life like a car's dashboard. When you drive, all right, there are several gauges there in front of you. There's the gas gauge, there's the oil gauge, there's the temperature gauge, there are several gauges. And if one of those gauges is empty, if one of those gauges is low, or if one of those gauges overheats, you ignore it at your own risk. And the same thing's true in your own life. If you ignore some key gauges, internal gauges, I'm telling you, if we're going to do this thing for the long haul, you will end up in the ditch or you'll end up crashed somewhere. For about 7 or 8 years, as a pastor in Chicago, I was a part of a small group with about a dozen pastors of the largest church in the Chicagoland area. And if I was to tell you the names, of those 12 people, some of you in this room would know all 12 of those folks, their names. Probably everybody in this room would know some of those people, if not all of them. If I tried to reassemble that small group today, and we haven't met for a few years now, actually probably 8 years, but if I tried to reassemble that small group today, at least half those seats would be empty. Because somewhere along the way, they ended up in a ditch. They crashed and burned. And essentially, when I'm about to talk about these 4 gauges here on the inside, they didn't pay attention to these gauges. Okay? And so here, if you're going to be this multiplier, and you're going to do this for the next 25, 35, 45, 50 years, or however many years God gives you left, you need to pay attention to these 4 gauges. And the 4 gauges are relational, physical, mental, and spiritual. Relational, physical, mental, and spiritual. How are we doing on the diagram? We got that diagram? There we go. That's you. Let's go to the next slide. There you go. Okay, relational, physical, mental, and spiritual. Now you're going, did you just make that up? No, I don't think I just made it up. This is exactly how Jesus matured. If we look at Luke chapter 2, verse 52, the only evidence we have, the only indication we have of Jesus' own leadership development was, and it says it very clearly there, it says he grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. You have those 4 components there, relational, physical, mental, and spiritual. So you need to pay real close attention to all 4 of these gauges your whole life. And the first is what I'm going to call, let's go to the slide, relational gauge. Okay, the relational gauge. Who you are, okay, is shaped, or let me say it differently. Who you're with shapes who you become. Who you're with shapes who you become. At 20 years of age, your friends are one of the single biggest predictors of your future direction. At 45 years of age, your friends are one of the single biggest predictors of your future success. At 65 years of age, your friends are the single biggest predictor of your future. Here's what I want you to do. We're going to take 10 seconds. I want to make this a little more interactive. I want you to turn to the person next to you, 10 seconds. Just take 10 seconds. Who in your life is sharpening you right now? Who in your life is sharpening you right now? I want you to bring a person to mind. Okay, who is that person? Who's a person that is sharpening you right now? And go ahead and turn to a person next to you and just each of you share it. Begin right now. Here we go. Proverbs 27:17. It says this. It says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And the question I think you want to always be asking us is, who is sharpening me? And then even a harder question is, who are you sharpening? That's the relational gauge. I'm telling you, you've got to pay real close attention to this relational gauge. But it's not just the relational gauge. There's a second gauge, okay? The P stands for a physical gauge. And this is one that Christians like to ignore. But what we don't realize is this body is an issue of stewardship, all right? It's actually a spiritual issue. 1 Corinthians 6:19 says, do you not know that your bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit? I've had the privilege of running 3 different marathons, and I know that fueling is a critical part of a long run. You can't run a marathon on empty fuel. In the same way, you can't constantly be pulling all-nighters and eating Chick-fil-A and just living on caffeine and expect to thrive in life and ministry. And so I could ask students, okay, think about last year. How many of you pulled an all-nighter last year? All-nighters, right. Okay, now how many of you did it to study? Come on. And here's the thing, too. I want you to have fun. I think God even wants us to have fun. So I'm not going to be a killjoy. Let's have some fun along the way. But let me talk to the rest of y'all, too. How many of you know, oh my gosh, I should be exercising, but I'm not. I won't even make you raise your hand. It's going to get embarrassing, okay? No, you don't have to even do it, okay? Because everybody will be shaming the whole crowd. But I'm telling you, okay? I want you to grapple with that just a little bit. Grapple with that a little bit. Because physical health is connected to spiritual longevity. And it's all about how you're going to make an impact. Personally, I've seen too many leaders who drop out of the marathon before the finish line of ministry, not because they didn't love Jesus, but because they didn't take care of this thing. They didn't take care of this thing. Do you ever think about this? It's actually a spiritual issue. There is like a movement inside some of you all. But if you don't take care of this thing and last to your 65, 75, 85, and instead you end up cashing out at 55, you're never going to see some of the most awesome things that God wants to do. So it's worth the trip. to the gym. It's worth the trip to do a little mileage out running. It's worth it. I think this is kind of a Jesus thing. There's also the mental gauge. So you got a relational gauge, you got a mental gauge, or a physical gauge, then you got a mental gauge. And this one's probably more important than it's ever been, at least in our lifetime. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world." Help me out, but be transformed by the renewing of your what? Exactly right. And ministry, and I've done it for 35 years, it is more of a mental battlefield than ever. I think there's more stress, more anxiety, more comparison, and it is a mental grind. And you need, I'm telling you, I'm starting with the inside stuff first before we ever get to the external stuff. The insides, you need, to pay attention to your mental health, or it will take you out. And some of you silently have kind of gone to the sidelines just because you didn't want to talk about it, but it happened. And so what we need to do from time to time is spend some time renewing our mind by soaking in Scripture. Sometimes some of us, we need to practice gratitude. Some of us need counseling. We need therapy. We need to find a spiritual director or coach. Some of us, we just simply need to turn our phone off more. I mean, how many of you can, I'm curious, how many of us in the room could say, I've gone full 24 hours without looking at my phone in the past year? Okay, I'm going about 10%. Now, why does that matter? Because here's the thing, your mind needs renewal, not just constant noise. If you're going to make this thing over the long haul, or over how much time God has left for you, you need to pay attention to your relational gauge, you need to pay attention to the physical gauge, you need to pay attention to the mental gauge, but of course, the last one is the spiritual gauge. This is like the engine. Without it, nothing else matters. John 15:5 says, I'm the vine, you're the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. You will make an impact. But apart from me, you can do nothing. And if we go into the original Koine Greek, you know that word nothing? You know what it means? Nothing, okay? You knew that was coming, right? That's what it means. It means nothing. You will do nothing. That's what makes this one so important. Now, let me illustrate, because we got to keep moving here, why these gauges are so important and why you need to routinely check these 4 gauges. A story that I like, this goes back to the early 1900s, 2 explorers. There's a guy named Amundsen and also Scott, 2 different individuals, Amundsen and Scott. Both of them wanted to be the very first to reach the South Pole. It was basically a race. Both faced the exact same brutal conditions. Scott, his strategy was actually inconsistent. On good weather days headed to the South Pole, he'd push his team to exhaustion and go as far as possible. On bad days, they'd hunker down and wait for the bad weather to pass. His strategy was kind of inconsistent. That was Scott. Amundsen had a different strategy. He determined that every single day they were going to go 20 miles towards the South Pole. 20 miles, no matter what the weather. His team would march exactly 20 miles, not 18 miles, not 25 miles, but 20 miles. His strategy was one of consistency. Guess which one made it? Amundsen. 20 miles a day, reached the South Pole first, and actually then returned safely. Scott and his team, if you don't know the history on this one, they all died. Him and his team perished on that journey. All right, so what's the lesson here for us? Success is not about these occasional sprints. There's some things we gotta, and there's lots of room for grace in this, but I'm telling you, as best you can, it's about a steady, consistent, faithful habit. And one of the things, so like you see that, the relational, physical, mental, spiritual, literally, if you look at my journal, probably for the last 15 or 20 years, almost every day, I write those letters, RPMS in my journal. RPMS, and I've done 1 or 2 things. Either I'll give myself a score on a scale of 1 to 10. How am I doing relationally? How am I doing physically? How am I doing mentally? How am I doing spiritually? Or I'll make a little gauge, like it's empty or full. Empty or full. And then if I need to take action on one of those because I see it's starting to get full, starting to get low, I'll figure, okay, what do I need to do? Are you with me on this? Now, some of you are going like, this seems crazy. I'm telling you, it takes me like 3 minutes every day. Think about this. It's not a hard thing. I'm not talking about, I'm not a contemplative kind of person. But every day I pause to reflect on these internal gauges going, how am I doing relationally? R. How am I doing physically? P. How am I doing mentally? M. How am I doing spiritually? S. Because here's what I think happens. I think a lot of us, we drift just one day at a time, 1 week at a time, and all of a sudden it becomes a month and becomes a year, and we drift. This is what happened to my friends in that small group. They end up someplace they never intended to be. Are you tracking with me? They end up someplace they never intended to be. So again, I'm maybe especially you all, but everybody here, I'm telling you. So here's what I want you to do. Just think quietly. We're going to give you 10 seconds again. Which of these 4 gauges for you are low right now? Which of these 4 gauges for you are low right now? And then ask yourself, what one habit could you start this week, okay, to get that gauge back to full? What could you start to move that gauge to full? Are you with me? All right, now why do we start on the inside? I want to start on the inside. I start on the inside because impact starts from the inside out. You will, this may be the most important leadership principle I've ever learned. You're going to reproduce who you are. You're going to reproduce who you are. If you want the people in your church to have great marriages, try your best to have a great marriage, relational. If you want the people in your church to be great parents, do your very best to be a great parent, relational, right? If you want your people to be mentally healthy, do your best to take care of your own mind and go get counseling if you need it, or talk to a therapist, or get a spiritual guide or a coach, whatever it is that you need to do. Does that make sense? You reproduce who you are. So that's where I'm going to start. So now we're going to move to the outside. And again, I'm giving you this simple diagram. This is like a diagram you could do on the back of a napkin. As you're thinking about all the people who are going to influence you, go like, hey, here's how you could spend the next 50 years of your life and create a movement. It starts on the inside, but now we're going to move to the outside. And in the same way that Jesus gave us those 4 gauges, he also gives us 4 practices. Now, this is going to be simple to understand, but I'm telling you, the routine of doing this over and over and over again for the rest of your life, that's a challenge to do. Simple to understand, but hard to do. And here's the first of the 4 practices. Make disciple makers. That's the first one. Make disciple makers. Jesus didn't just say, go make disciples. He said, go make disciples who make disciples. That's the first practice. And for many of us in this room, we are constantly creating discipleship opportunities. But the danger becomes that you're creating discipleship opportunities, but not multiplying disciples. Again, it's well-intentioned, but it's a subtle, very important distinction. So don't just lead a Bible study. Start discipling someone who's younger in the faith, who you're teaching them how to lead a Bible study. Impact happens when you disciple people to become disciple makers. Again, let's take 10 seconds. Here we go, 10 seconds. I want you to bring one name to mind, just one. Write it down if you want, okay? But bring one name to mind of who's one person you can intentionally disciple. Who's one person? If you're taking notes, write it down. My contention is this: if you can't name the person, if you can't name the people you're discipling, you probably aren't multiplying disciples. So let's just be honest about that. And let's make some changes. Go, hey, I can actually name a person, and if I name that person, they go like, yeah, that's what's happening. Here's the second practice. The first one, make disciple makers. Second one is then establish spiritual communities. Establish spiritual communities. So you take the people that you're turning into disciple makers and you bring them together in a community. This is how we planted a church. Because your greatest impact, and I think all of us need to realize, the greatest impact most likely will not happen on a stage like this one. It'll happen probably around a dinner table. It'll happen probably in a coffee shop. It'll happen in a small group or friends who are accountable together or lives that are on mission. Because Jesus' mission gets executed, most often, you've heard this, in circles and not rows. In circles and not rows. Third practice, okay? First one, make disciple makers. As you do that, you can name those folks. You put them together in a small group. You establish spiritual communities, missional community. You name what you want to name. I don't care. The third one, okay? This is what Jesus did, right? Called people to be disciples, put them into this community of folks. And then what happened next? The third thing, you mobilize brand new leaders. You mobilize brand new leaders. We talked about this quite a bit last night. The leaders who make the greatest impact don't hoard leadership. What they do is they hand it off. So you got these people you're discipling, you get them in this community, and next thing you do is you look around that small group, you look around that missional community, you look around at that small group, and the third practice is you mobilize some new leader to go out and do the same thing. You're a hero maker. We talked about this last night. How many of you have had somebody tap you on the shoulder and have that I see in you conversation? I see this in you. And I'll tell you what, man, when that happens, it is so empowering. And I would say to students, what if you decided right now, I'm going to flip the script and I'm going to start doing that? I'm not waiting on somebody just because I'm younger to do it to me, but I'm going to do it with somebody else. And I'm going to say, I see this in you, and call them into service, call them into disciple making, call them into leadership. And what about some of you all, the more senior leaders? What if you said, you know what, every week, I'm going to have at least one I see in you conversation. Every week. That's just going to be a habit, because I want to be mobilizing brand new leaders to do brand new stuff. So multipliers, we don't just do the ministry. This is hard to get off this kind of this wheel. We don't just do ministry. We multiply ministry by multiplying leaders. And then the fourth expression. The fourth is you launch church expressions. Now, this one sounds the most intimidating. It sounds the most intimidating. And it's probably intimidating because you look around here and you're going, oh my goodness, how could I ever do this, right? That's not what we're talking about. This is an awesome place. But to launch new expressions is a lot simpler than you might think. Launching a new church expression doesn't mean you have to have a building. It doesn't mean you have to hire staff. It means a gathering. In fact, if you ask me what a church is, I would say this. Here's a simple, what I call a simple ecclesiology. A church is this: a community of people on mission together where Jesus is Lord. A community of people on mission together where Jesus is Lord. Oh, maybe I could do that, right? Maybe I could do that. And it might start as a Bible study in your dorm. It might start as a prayer group at Starbucks. It might start as a digital community online. Let me give you a real life example of this, okay? And we're going to go around this wheel. Rick is a friend of mine who's a salesman. He's not a pastor, at least not a paid pastor. He's not a missionary. He's an ordinary good guy. But Rick has this huge, huge heart for the special needs community. Just loves kids with special needs. And he's one of the people that I'm equipping to be a disciple maker. Okay? That first one, right? He's one of the names on my list. Now, every summer, what Rick does is he volunteers at the camp to work with kids with special needs. And he loves it. I mean, it is like the highlight of his summer. He comes back, and almost every week at small group, he talks about, oh, let me tell you about what happened at camp. Let me tell you what happened at camp. He gets teary-eyed, just can't talk about it enough. He loves it, they love it, and he comes home feeling more alive than ever before. Well, I took Rick and some others who wanted to be discipled, and I established a spiritual community, that second one, right? And we meet every Tuesday at Rick's house. Now, a couple of years ago, Exponential, we have conferences. We did one in Chicago, and he came to the conference. And he showed up kind of the same way that maybe some of you showed up here, hoping for a little encouragement, a little hope, a little inspiration. And it gets to the closing session, kind of like we are. And the speaker is given a challenge on this last one of launching new church expressions. And he says this. He says, you know what? To plant a church, you don't have to have a building. And he's got a huge building. I mean, he probably has a building that's like 10,000 seater. It's just huge. But he says, no, you don't have to have a building. You just need to be available. And then he says, to plant a church, you don't have to have money. You just need to be available. And then he says, in fact, you don't have to have a seminary degree You just need to be available. Jesus is looking for people that are available. And then he had people come forward and said, if you're available, I want you to come forward and we want to just pray over you and have you pray this I'm available prayer. And I'm looking down the row at my buddy Rick, who's in my small group, who's a salesman, and all of a sudden he goes forward, and I'm going, what the heck is happening? And so afterwards, I'm talking to Rick. I said, Rick, what's going on? And he's like, I don't know. He said, if you're available, and I'm available, could I plant a church? I was like, for who? And he's like, all my friends who have special needs. I was like, oh. And the more we talked about it, he's going like, you know what? They try to come to some of our church services, and it's because of just the way their bodies work. It's just that they create commotion and they feel uncomfortable. We feel uncomfortable. He's like, it's hard. He said, could I do that? I was like, why not? And so well, here's what happened next. He comes to a small group and he tells our small group, he's going like, hey, I was at this exponential conference. They gave this talk about planting a church. And they said, if you're available, you can do it. And I'm available. And here's what's kind of funny. He was a salesman, but just shortly after that, he lost his job. He'd been in sales for 20 years. You know what his comment was? I'm more available than ever. I'm more available than ever. He's telling our small group this. So we're all listening to him talk about how he just prayed this I'm available prayer. And we said, well, okay, if you're available, why don't you just sit there on the edge of the coffee table in his own house, in his living room. Our small group makes a circle around him. We all put our hands on him. Now, we're a non-denominational church, so you can kind of do crazy things, right? This is basically his ordination. We put hands on him. We said, okay, you know what? If you feel like God's calling you to start a church for the special needs community, we're with you. We're behind you. We want to pray over you. And we want to mobilize you to start this new church. You hear me? Within the next year, Rick launched a new church that meets in a local gym on Sunday nights. And he has 75 to 100 folks who have people in their community that have special needs. And you should come to it. My wife, when we go, she calls it beautiful chaos. It's just beautiful chaos. And here's the thing, too. I mean, like, I don't think it's ever occurred to Rick that he ought to get paid to pastor that new church. He's just like thrilled beyond belief that he gets to do it. And I'm telling you, there are all kinds of people, all kinds of opportunities, and he's reaching people that we never could have reached. See, that's impact. That's ordinary people. It's an extraordinary God, but it's radical availability. And I want to say, particularly to the students in the room, I know some of you I'm kind of pointing at you guys here right in the front, but all of you across the students here, do not wait until you're older. Do not wait. Say, well, when I get married. Don't wait till someday when you're ready. This what I'm putting you right here, this idea of being a multiplier, I'm telling you, this can start right now. I just learned this in the last couple of years from my friends in Africa. Maybe some of you already knew this, but do you know this about the disciples? Most scholars tell us the disciples, you know how old they are? They said most of the disciples were probably teenagers, and there's evidence that Peter was probably in his early 20s, maybe 21, but all the rest of them were like teenagers. I mean, Jesus basically started with like a youth group. He didn't say, wait 10 years, and then I'll use you. He said, no, are you available? Come follow me. And for those of us that aren't in that demographic here, that you've been around, you've been doing this thing for 10, 20, 30, 50 years, okay? Today is the first day of the rest of your ministry. And if Jesus walked in here and he said, are you available? Are you available? Are you available? What would you say? Here's my challenge, okay? Challenge number one. Take this little diagram here. If you haven't written it down, haven't taken a picture of it, take a picture of it. I want you to pick one gauge this week. Pick one gauge: relational, physical, mental, spiritual. And let's do a tune-up, okay? Let's do a tune-up. What's it going to be? Because we need all of you in this for the long haul. I mean, if God decides to take you out, that's his business. But as far as we're concerned, we need to be stewards. We're going to be in this for the long haul because there's a lot of differences we're trying to make out there. Start your 20-mile march habit. That's on the inside because you're going to reproduce who you are. And if we're going to reproduce health, we need to be healthy. Challenge number 2. Take one multiplying step. Look at that. You just do this over and over and over again. This is hard to do, but it's simple to understand. What's it going to be? You're going to disciple someone? Maybe start a prayer group? Tap a peer on the shoulder to say, hey, go get them. I believe in you. Maybe it's even, I was talking to somebody, some people that are saying, they said, oh, I'm just volunteers. I said, you're not just a volunteer. I'm going to tell you a story about Rick who started a church. You were meant for more. You're not just here to fill a pulpit. You're not just here to run programs. You're not just here to manage people. You were designed, okay, just like those early disciples, to be a multiplier, to catalyze a movement. It's in you. It's in you. And if you're willing to pray that prayer, God, I'm available. In a moment, we're going to have communion. But I'm just going to leave some silence here, okay? And I'm going to ask you to bow your head. And if you're available, the same way my buddy Rick was available, for however God wants to use you, just right now, just tell him, just say, I'm available. Let's just take a few minutes. You just tell him in your own way. Just tell him, hey, I am available. I am available. I'm available. Because that's the prayer that changes everything.